You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some devastating news for Trump in the form of newly released confidential testimony from Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell. Those are Trump's former attorneys during their proffer sessions with Fulton County, Georgia investigators. Now, first of all, the most damning part, Jenna Ellis saying that Trump, quote, would not leave the White House under any circumstance. We're just going to stay in power. So what are the implications of that testimony from Ellis?
This is a knockout blow on the criminal intent front. I mean, there's no way for Donald Trump to maintain even a little glimmer of hope, of convincing people that he lacked criminal intent. Why? Because once you have witnesses, your own lawyers, for goodness sake, saying, you informed everybody that it didn't matter if you lost, you're not leaving, you're not relinquishing power. So this evidence really is something of a knockout blow that can be used to prove Donald Trump's criminal intent once and for all, conclusively, beyond a reasonable doubt. But lest we think it's too good to be true, there's still a caveat, Brian. And the evidence has to be in admissible form. What do I mean by that? Well, Jenna Ellis reportedly said that Dan Scavino, one of Donald Trump's close aides, was the one who was relating this information. Here's the thing. It's hearsay from any other witness except the one who heard it come out of Donald Trump's mouth himself. So when the statement was attributed to Dan Scavino, and there's a really important pronoun in there, she said, Dan Scavino said, we are not leaving. Bingo, because now that incriminates Dan Scavino as well. That will have implications when they are fighting over the admissibility of certain statements at Donald Trump's trial. But what prosecutors really want is the person who heard the admission from the horse's mouth himself. So the minute I heard this reporting, I thought to myself, okay, well, Dan Scavino, we know, together with Mark Meadows, were referred for criminal prosecution for contempt of Congress. I know it seems like ancient history now, but neither one of them were prosecuted. Neither one was indicted for that crime. So maybe Dan Scavino has been cooperating with law enforcement authorities, both Jack Smith federally and DA Willis in the Georgia RICO case. But I'll tell you, this ups the ante with respect to Dan Scavino being brought into the fold. It seems to me like there's probably enough evidence to charge him criminally, but we all know he has not been charged anywhere, not in DC, not in Georgia. There is a natural inference that we can draw that he may be cooperating with the authorities, because if he has this kind of dramatically incriminating evidence against Donald Trump, and when he was sharing it, he said, we have concluded, according to what the boss said, we have concluded we're not relinquishing power. Well, that puts Scavino right in the criminal mix himself.
Okay, well, as far as firsthand testimony is concerned, what about Powell's testimony that a whole raft of White House lawyers came in and told Donald Trump that he lost, and his conscious decision was to ignore that information and barrel forward with his efforts to seal the election anyway?
That's icing on the criminal intent cake. Right now we have Sidney Powell, who does have firsthand testimony out of Donald Trump's own mouth, saying, yeah, I know, look, all these lawyers all day long are telling me I lost the election. You see what I have to deal with? Well, what he was having to deal with was reality, the actual
Yeah.
fact-based results that he lost the election, and the White House lawyers were telling him so. He didn't want to accept it. So, that really does kind of dovetail with this, new blockbuster information from Jenna Ellis that Trump said he ain't leaving. He ain't relinquishing power. Doesn't matter. And it all sort of harkens back to the statements that we heard Donald Trump make, because some of his own DOJ officials were taking contemporaneous notes, real-time notes of what Donald Trump was saying. And Donald Trump in December, right? This is before January 6th, said, I don't care. I don't care if there was no fraud undermining the election's results. Just say there was and leave the rest up to me and my Republican allies in Congress. Brian, you put all of that together and present it to the jury, they are going to vote guilty so fast it will make Donald Trump's head spin.
Now, I just want to be perfectly clear here for posterity. Given that Trump's defense will be that he legitimately believed that he won the election, does this testimony from both Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis, among other people, completely undermine his entire case here?
Yeah, completely. When coupled with other evidence that we were already aware of, Donald Trump cannot present to a jury a plausible claim that he thought he won. There's no support for that anywhere, no matter where he turns. Not the White House lawyers who told him he lost, not his own vice president, not his own attorney general, not his own one-time nefarious lawyers who have pleaded guilty and flipped on him. But you know what? I hope Donald Trump tries to present that defense, because the only way he gets to present that defense, because the rules of evidence actually apply once you're in trial, the only way he gets to present to the jury that he in his mind actually believed he won is if he crawls up on the witness stand, is placed under oath, and then prosecutors get to cross-examine him. He's not going to do that. And let me just finish out the discussion of the rules of evidence. The rules of evidence prohibit any other witness from coming in to a prosecution and testifying that, oh, Donald Trump thought he won. That's inadmissible. The only way it becomes admissible evidence is the person who claims he thought something, thought he won, takes the stand and testifies. Brian, Donald Trump has nowhere left to turn, which is why all he does now is attack the process and the institutions and the judge and the prosecutor and President Biden and the witnesses, right? That's all he has left. He has no defense on the merits, on the facts, so he has to try to undermine the process and the people who populate the process and the institutions, because he knows a guilty verdict is coming, and he has to do everything he can to undermine the institutions so that maybe people will be less inclined to accept that guilty verdict.
Oh, I mean, what's the worst that could happen if Donald Trump took the stand? I don't foresee any major problems arising out of that. Glenn, finally, let's finish off with this. How did this footage from the proffer sessions get released, and why do you think it was released?
That is the $64,000 question. The minute I saw these videos.
So to be clear, like, this isn't something that would normally be released here.
So sometimes it will be made part of the public record, right? It will be put on the public docket if there has been some litigation and the judge ruled, yes, some of this information should be made public for some reason. But short of that, I have no idea how reporters got their hands on it. If it was not a court-ordered or court-sanctioned release of evidence, then to me, it feels like a leak. But here's the thing. It could have been leaked by Jenna Ellis and her lawyer. Maybe they believe there's some tactical reason that will work to their advantage to get this evidence out into the public square now. I don't know what that tactical advantage would be. Maybe it will help persuade other people in the Georgia case, other defendants who have not yet pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate. Maybe it will convince them to plead guilty and cooperate. Why? Because there's strength in numbers, there's safety in numbers. And the more RICO defendants in the Georgia case that decide to flip, I think the greater the likelihood that the whole case may end up going away. Who knows? Even Donald Trump could try to negotiate himself a guilty plea. Not terribly likely. But I have been asking myself that same question, Brian, and I don't have any good answer to, how it is that these tapes kind of made their way into the public square.
Well, I think your point is a great one, because my initial thinking was this isn't great for prosecutors because it kind of does give the whole ball game away, right? This basically shows or kind of broadcasts the entire prosecution. But then with that said, the other remaining co-defendants are going to see that. They're going to see the strength of this case that's awaiting them if they don't choose to cooperate with prosecutors, if they don't choose to flip against Donald Trump. And that is such, to your point, you saw it immediately. You called it out immediately. It is such a home run case against Donald Trump and those who remain allied with Donald Trump that after the remaining co-defendants watch this, I don't see a planet on which they can see this and decide to stay on Donald Trump's team, to stay fighting this case, which is so airtight now, given just, a small sampling of what we've seen.
If they don't cut their losses, agree to take responsibility for their own crimes and agree to provide truthful testimony against Donald Trump and anybody else, then I think they are making a very serious mistake.
Yeah. All right. Well, seems like the perfect place to leave off. So obviously we'll stay on top of this trial as it continues to play out, or as we continue to see footage get released in any which way. So with that said, if you're not yet subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.